Man, this tape sucks. This wasn't even a part of my childhood. Literally, like, none of it was. So, why the hell do I even feel nostalgic for it? Since the dawn of humanity, we've always been obsessed with what once was. Even the Sumerians did it. For our parents, grandparents, and even the generation before, it was the simple act of like playing outside on a warm summer evening, basking in the fading sunlight before mom called you and your friends in to eat chicken nuggets. For Gen Z, it's like playing Minecraft and shit.
What is this, bro? No!
And as for Gen Alpha, it's probably gonna be some like Roundhouse pregnancy video or something, I don't know. One thing is undeniable though. For the past few years, especially after COVID, much of the internet seems to be absolutely enthralled with the idea of nostalgia. There are entire YouTube channels, Instagram pages, Twitter accounts, and even more dedicated to posting old, shitty developed images of playgrounds and daycares with the sound of mourning doves cooing in the background. If you haven't seen it by now, you're probably like 9 and don't even have nostalgia to begin with. Maybe, like me to a degree, you've even gotten kind of sick of it too. You're sick of seeing videos of poorly lit daycares or Fruitage or Arrow desktop backgrounds and all of those videos attempting to bring you back to playing Minecraft for the first time in 2012. It almost seems like a little much. Like, we're constantly being fed this altered and distorted view of history so we don't have to think about the issues that trouble us as young adults or teenagers today. Or maybe you enjoy living in that nostalgic era that helps you find a central balance for your mind amongst the chaos of today. So I've come to ask the following question. When does this nostalgia wave become too much? When does this constant living in the past negatively affect us living through tough times by preventing us from adjusting to the real world? I'm going to be covering these and more in today's video through the following sections. 1. What is the root of much of this nostalgia, and even nostalgia for a place or time that we've never even visited? And where did it even come from? 2. What are its negative effects today? And 3. I'll also take a look at some of the stuff that really was better in the past, at least arguably, as well as a little bonus section. Some advice from me to you about healthy nostalgia and using it as a way to accept our present. So, put on your rose-tinted glasses and let's get ready to explore how the internet has become addicted to nostalgia.
But really quickly, we have to do $2 Troop roll call. Unusual, Chief Guy, Bracel, Yellow, Primiar, Tabu, TV Cat, Mass, Jeff, 2, Frisk, Andaliv, Rupert, and Limper here today, alongside ZNN, MP2, Doug Dimmadome, Mariotron, Nep, Squonk, Numi, Wes Canesco, Keyrose, Mika Henderson, and Gameboy Patreon, as well as T-Truth, Zode, PGLV, Dan the Content Man, Draggy, Alamovo, Blueberry Benny, Degamasia, Klondike, Sip Ryan, Planet, Kaczynski, Sydney, Wild Sunny, Tesco Terra, and Zano. Enlist in the $2 Troop by using the link in the description.
Look, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm a sucker for stuff like this too. I remember before the first Backner's posts on 4chan started getting spread around, there was a slow but growing interest in the concept of, quote, strange but familiar places, around 2018 or so. Images like these originally were meant to be slightly off-putting. I'm not sure how many of you remember this trend, but I was instantly into them from day one. I loved this sort of eerie and disturbing feeling they gave me when I saw images of a dimly lit children's playroom with really bright flash or a playground only illuminated by a dim full moon. But over time, this concept started to warp into what I'd like to call false collective nostalgia. I'll expand more on this later, but to see where this all really got started, we have to take a look at the grandfather of the liminal space. In 2019, one of the 12 cool people on 4chan posted an image and caption to the paranormal board of the website reading, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell heard you." You all know the story. Immediately, this got the internet, including myself, cooking up all kinds of crazy ideas and stories surrounding the concept. Within a few months, people had come up with new levels and other ideas all surrounding the concept of liminal spaces, usually being long hallways or places that are like devoid of all things that make them feel, well, human in a sense. Eventually, we started getting spin-off aesthetics, one of which you probably know very well. Dreamcore, in all of its later iterations, is probably where this nostalgia obsession got started. Once again, we're brought back to the year that probably didn't even exist.
It has to come from the same virus to be in the same family.
That's when, unsurprisingly, a lot of this stuff started spreading like wildfire on YouTube and especially TikTok, obviously. People were stuck inside and began to reminisce on times where they felt the world was kinder to them, which for many of us is the 2000s. I put that in big quotes, by the way. Because the funny part is, a lot of us were barely even conscious during that time period. Yes, I know some of you that watch this channel grew up in the 90s or whatever, but I'm just talking to my general demographic here. I remember I recently saw a post that said, quote, "It's summer 2004 and you just got home from your last day of school." And the comments were like drooling over this idealized reality of childhood when a lot of the people commenting weren't even a thought in their parents' heads then. However, it's through posts like this that a sort of nostalgic zeitgeist has emerged on the internet, often showing a collection of a few things. If the image is real, it's usually either an ambiguous image of some interior room with that fucking roadmap carpet that literally every child of the 2000s, including myself, had, alongside some sort of aesthetic that was noticeable in handheld digital cameras of the era. This usually involves like a bright flash or no depth of field or like low light digital film grain, you know the drill. If it's outside, it's usually a Midwest or Northeast United States outdoors scene, often in the summertime with children-sized tables or playgrounds or even suburban housing blocks. Sometimes they're even at night, maybe a snowy house in rural North Carolina only illuminated by a Christmas tree in the window. But the funny part is, many of us didn't even grow up in these parts of the country or in the world if you're a viewer from out of the States, yet we all have this false collective nostalgia towards it. Like I said earlier, this concept of false nostalgia has been gaining strength for a while now. Personally, I hated the suburbs around me as a kid. I thought they were just like boring and lifeless and humid and just gross in general. However, as I've grown older, I feel slightly nostalgic for the types of suburbs I know for a fact I live nowhere near. Many others can attest to this too. There's a reason these images were originally called, quote, strange but familiar places. But these feelings aren't just limited to the real world either. Another very popular aesthetic is the well-known fruitager arrow. Water, nature, butterflies, plants, solar panels, windmills, what have you. If you were born before 2006 or so, you probably have faint memories of this style that was very prevalent on technology of every kind during the 2000s. The funny thing is, when iOS 7 dropped, aka the update that killed fruitager arrow according to many, I was actually super hyped about it. I didn't even own an iPhone in 2012, yet I felt a simpler art style looked so much better. Now, however, after the pandemic basically made America and even the rest of the world that much more reliant on megacorporations and the vast amount of money that kept them afloat during the pandemic, people quickly got tired of this minimal and uninspired style. You know the type. Look at this guy, or girl. They're purple and have wavy hair. Wow, so sleek and stylish. Their limbs are freakishly disproportionate. This level of diversity is almost making me forget this is an abusive megacorporation that steals my data. So, naturally, many began having a reactionary appreciation for one of the most grossly detailed and oversaturated aesthetics the world has ever known. It's gotten to the point where I've almost come full circle too. I honestly do miss the days of detailed and glossy glass-like app icons, but not because they necessarily look good, more because I'm sick of seeing a popular brand change its logo to have 3 colors and no outlines because it's sleek and modern. But there's a catch to all this fun nostalgia talk. When does it go too far? At what point does a fun look back become an unhealthy way of coping for many people? In the next part, we'll talk about how nostalgia baiting has gone too far and made many people forget what the past was actually like, and how it is used as part of an escapist mentality many people use as a coping mechanism. At this point in time, things aren't looking so great. War, poverty, political instability, what have you. But here's the thing. I could have said that in 2020, 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004, 2000, 1996, 1992. My point being, there has not been a single period of history on this damn planet where some bullshit was started by some egomaniacal world leader to stop some bullshit that wasn't really an issue, wasn't constantly happening around the world. Although that's a bit out of the scope of today's video, I'm not trying to get into politics or anything, the main issue I want to bring up here is how nostalgia has become less of a way of appreciating the past and has morphed into this unhealthy escapist mentality where people would treat into a false past in an effort to stay calm during tough times. Again, why do you think nostalgia core and the other 10 billion cores exploded during 2020? Escapism is healthy and normal for a time, but if it becomes a lifestyle, it can leave one to never accept reality for how it is, complicated and forever changing. Mental health is different for everyone. It's important to remember that. While the brain likes to seek out patterns, ironically, the more we settle into a pattern, the more the brain is unwilling to change. But don't just take my word for it. In an article written for Psychology Today, Dr. Valentina Stoicheva talks about how nostalgia can be harmful as a long-term coping mechanism. Quote, "I think of emotional regulation strategies as the spices we use to flavor our food. If you use the right amount at the right time, you end up with a perfectly balanced dish. Too much salt, vinegar, or habanero, however, the meal becomes inedible, and sometimes even harmful. However, when taken to an extreme, nostalgia can also, on the one hand, lead us to unhelpful behaviors and negative consequences, and on the other hand, prevent us from utilizing more helpful coping strategies. It's no secret that Gen Z and probably Gen Alpha are and will continue to experience a defining test for the next long while, the Great Loneliness Crisis. So, among many other social, economic, and political issues that are of varying intensity depending upon your own life, often cause us to reach for what we perceive to be simpler times. There's no denying that every person, young and old, has a huge soft spot for the good old days and loves to talk about when times were simpler. However, the internet has allowed these ideas to spread and form a monolithic interpretation of the past for many of us older teenagers and young adults. This is where the issue stems from: anemoia. Anemoia is a term that was coined by John Koenig or whatever, I think that's how you say it, to refer to nostalgia for a place or concept that we have never experienced. But what happens when you're nostalgic for something that never actually existed? You begin to construct this doubly false reality where you dismiss the current world and live in an imaginary one, both at the same time. In the same article I talked about earlier, Dr. Stoicheva writes, quote, "The difference between helpful and harmful nostalgia is the difference between incorporating the positive emotions of reminiscing into the present versus renouncing the past for the sake of reinstating and perpetually reliving some moment in the past." That's what a lot of these pages have been capitalizing off. This sudden obsession with false nostalgia that has been used by many in our generation as a form of constant escapism from the true reality of the world. This is merely a short-term fix to the mental health crisis we're currently living through, and it actively prevents our ability to heal as a generation by convincing ourselves that the world we used to live in was invariably better and more fun than the one we lived in today. Let's take a look at some of the comments on an Instagram page dedicated to these nostalgic images. We got some people saying, "Back when I loved school." Someone else said, "Back when school wasn't so stressful and depressing." Like, brother, you were 8 years old. You didn't have the capacity for those emotions yet. Taking another look at a post titled, quote, POV, it's the early to mid 2010s again. That shows a bunch of games and some types of videos like they're a relic of a lost era. Like, I'm pretty sure you can still play Doodle Jump and Jetpack Joyride, as well as find school life hack videos and top 10 scariest roller coaster videos. So, wallowing in his sorrow, this user posts the comment, "Life is so depressing now. There's no fun in the world anymore." Again, remember, he's saying this while also watching a video about things you can still easily do today. Just to ward off the genius contrarians in today's comment section, I'm not ridiculing these people for feeling depressed or lonely in today's world, but I'm trying to make a point about the sheer number of people who believe in this false notion of the world being so much better back in 2014 to 2016 or whatever other time period. The amount of times I've seen people talk about the summer of 2016 being the last time they enjoy life, or how 2019 was the last year the world looked colorful, is absolutely hilarious. I remember like 4 to 5 years ago, everyone gave 2012 this world was better than treatment, but 2012 was also kind of a whatever year. Every year, people look back upon previous eras with these internet-provided rose-tinted glasses that make you forget the true reason why those eras felt better. We were kids, that's it. We didn't have to worry about money, relationships, a job, etc. However, so many individuals believe wholeheartedly the world was objectively better, and it realistically shouldn't be happening to people as young adults or teenagers. Of course, sometimes it's stimulated by the mental health crisis. For the next part, though, I want to lend some credence to these claims on how the world really did have some better things in the past, as well as sharing some of my own experiences with nostalgia. Recently, I was offered to go roller skating at some place I hadn't been to in like a decade. In elementary school, we'd go there like once a year or so for a family fun night. Going back, the place hadn't changed a bit, and I really felt a powerful yet subtle feeling of nostalgia. It's a family-owned place that had a simultaneously retro and early 2000s aesthetic that hadn't changed much for decades. It was a truly unique experience. But I only use this feeling not as a way to escape from my day-to-day stresses and troubles, but as a momentary period of relaxation and fun to keep my spirits up. Part of this is driven by the subjective being my own experiences and feelings towards the place, but also, there is something to be said about how the world did feel more personal and less cold and uncaring in the past. Although I argue this is more in the form of small businesses and family-owned places rather than the people themselves. Especially before the Great Recession and also the pandemic, mega corporations were powerful but hadn't reached the absolute monstrous apex that reside at today. Although there's a lot of super complex, hard-to-grasp economics behind the why, the what is simple. In the 2000s, family-owned and local businesses contributed a lot more to our local community's identity than they do today. Community is a big part of nostalgia. The feeling of being surrounded by your, hopefully, loving parents, friends, and other adults in your life that made you feel safe and familiar. We're all very much annoyed by the f***ing corporate Memphis style and how these basic, obnoxiously simple logos are shoved in our faces, while multi-billion-dollar corporation number 33 tells us they're, quote, streamlining our brand image to promote inclusivity and readability for our marketing. In this sense, things like Frutigero and the cheap but charming feel the US specifically had more of in the 2000s compared to today at least, was realistically better than what we have today. But it's important to remember the world back then wasn't a f***ing utopia or anything. The quicker you realize that, the quicker you can learn to accept the world in general isn't perfect, and the easier it is to adapt. We go through big changes all the time, moving out for college, breaking up with someone, losing touch with friends, etc. However, if you're never able to accept the fact that life can be shitty sometimes, it's gonna feel shitty all the time. I don't want to lecture you guys, but I feel like it's necessary since this nostalgia addiction of sorts has become extremely popular with young adults and teenagers, and I hope making this video has shown you all that unhealthy nostalgia can really just make you less happy in the long run. But that's all I got for today, and I'll see you all in the next one.